Welcome to the We Win Injury Law podcast, everybody. I'm Tyler Todd, your host, sitting with my co-host, Jaron, the Snow Canyon Man, Sandberg. Good morning and good afternoon.
I like the good afternoon that we normally throw in there, but it is morning.
I mean, it's always a good afternoon, depending on who you're talking to. So,
good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Welcome back. It's been like a crazy ride with the Karen Reed trial that we've talked about on previous podcasts. The Diddy's still ongoing. Congratulations to Karen Reed. If you guys have been following that on social media, TikTok, Instagram, wherever you've kind of like dig into that stuff. One, I want to say Alan Jackson seems like just a normal guy, but he's also like a pseudo celebrity now. Two, he just came out and kind of validated kind of what we've been saying and what all of you have been saying, or a lot of you have been saying this entire time. Lies, cover-ups, and the evidence showed like she was innocent.
Well, it's been interesting to see, because some of that post-analysis, what he thought was the moment that, hey, this was the moment that you pray for as a trial attorney. And I think the moment that he said was when they got up and they showed the holes in the shirt. And then they later had to be like, oh, by the way, I just lied to you. It was actually a forensic examiner that called those holes.
Yeah. And Alan Jackson yesterday just gave a scathing rebuke to Hank Brennan, because apparently he just came out and made a comment about what an injustice this has been. And there was just abuse and harassment in social media that influenced the jury, which he's not supposed to do by the rules of professional conduct. And Alan Jackson was a former prosecutor himself, so he's familiar with obviously those rules and what you don't do. When a verdict is decided by a jury, it's over. Yeah. And you respect the process. Well, so it's crazy that he came out and kind of tainted that a bit.
Yeah. And it was interesting because I've thought that too. That moment was embarrassing it's your worst nightmare as a lawyer to be up there, have just presented this evidence as a prosecutor. I don't care if it's a defense attorney. When it's your expert on the line, and you then have to be like, mea culpa, I just lied to the court. And they had to have known.
They knew.
But I will say this. Listening to some of these jurors now speak has been kind of entertaining, because there was one yesterday, I think it was juror number 1, said...
The foreman.
I knew from day one. He goes, after the opening of both sides, I was already convinced of her innocence.
Foreman, yes.
Which had nothing to do with the whole, I'm sure those just solidified his beliefs, but it is interesting that we've learned this. We go to conferences where I feel like half the themes are your opening statement, because sometimes that's what, for better or for worse, people judge a book by its cover. And I think on a case, when you give a great opening statement to the jury, again, the prosecution got to go first. So they gave their opening, the defense then got to go. Juror number 1 was convinced from that moment on. And that's a pretty good opening statement.
She was never even hit by a car, or he was never even hit by a car. So, yeah, and he came out and said there was no evidence presented to him that would suggest that she did it, innocent from, like you said, day one. And then the follow-up question, and I don't know who was conducting the interview with him, but the follow-up question was, well, who did it? And his response was brilliant.
What did he say? I can't remember.
He said, well, that's not my job.
Yeah, which is perfect, though.
Which is perfect.
He understood the assignment, because that's what the judge tells him to do. I mean, that's what they get, all these not warnings, but instructions from the judge before jury deliberations, that it's not your job to decide who did it. It's if they've met their burden. That
It's interesting, though, because if you guys recall, and if you recall, we were all kind of freaking out a little bit because Auntie Bev was kind of moving around, jurors, and then specifically asked that juror to be the foreman. And I don't think any of us could see who that was. So we were all kind of freaking out, like, oh, she's pulling another fast one, selecting a juror who she thinks would be more in favor of the prosecution. Turns out he was the defense's guy from apparently day one. Yeah. So I don't know if that worked against her and her motives and what she was trying to accomplish, but that foreman definitely was on Karen Reed's side.
I will say that's the one element of these court TV, if we're going to call them a drama, because they feel like a drama, even though these are real cases.
Oh, totally. I mean, that's why I think Alan Jackson's a total celebrity now.
But I do wish we could see jury reactions to certain pieces of evidence, because we've obviously, you see is it Alan Jackson?
Alan Jackson.
You see Alan get up and righteous indignation's all over his face, right?
Wait, who are you talking about?
When he gets up and talks about they just lied to the court,
Oh, yeah.
You see his face, he's just appalled, right?
Right.
He's like, he's got this righteous defense that
Yeah,
he's trying to
yeah.
do, and they just lied to the jury. I would have loved to also see all the jury's faces in that moment. Like, what was their reaction to those key moments? Because we obviously know how TikTok and everyone thought the same thing. You know how TikTok's reacting to this, but it would have been. I feel like that's the one piece, and I get why they don't show juries in a lot of those courtroom. That they're protecting the jury kind of anonymity, but it would have been interesting to see if maybe during opening that juror who has now come out and said from day one, I felt like pretty convinced she was innocent. It would have been interesting to see his face if he had a tell or if he was like agreeing more with the because they didn't know. Even the way you can tell they didn't really know how it was going to go is the emotions on their face when the jury reads that verdict, and that goes back to, do you really know what the jury's going to do?
Well, I mean, and all we saw really were scowls. Really, I mean, that's might be an appropriate way of describing it from all of O'Keefe's family.
Yeah.
Right. And then spouses or partners. That's what it kept showing. Yep. And then, of course, all the faces Auntie Bev was making too. Oni or whatever her name is. So it's really interesting. I mean, I think, and like Alessi said, one of the other great defense lawyers, it's not over. With the facts that they've seen and the evidence they've seen, this is not over. And it's crazy, too, in which we haven't mentioned yet, and we'll wrap it up on our little deep dive in Karen Reed verdict. It's crazy that the McCabe's and Albert families came out and did an interview. Did you see it?
I didn't see their interview yet.
Oh, my gosh. Basically saying, whoa, and I think it was Brian Albert's wife, one thing, don't be a witness in cases. And they feel like they've been villainized and victimized. And I think we all want to remind them. And I think all the comments and a lot of the that I've seen on TikTok, is that why you sold your dog? Is that why you sold your house? Is that why you went and destroyed the SIM cards on a military base? I mean, is that why you did all those things? Because you're the victims?
Yeah.
I mean, be so for real. So a crazy move by those individuals to do that interview. And now there's people in Canton, Massachusetts that are coming out against the Albert family. It's just wild. So the drama's not over. It's not over.
I love it.
So stay tuned. We'll probably add some more stuff once more things happen. But one thing we really wanted to talk to you guys about today, in addition, obviously, to the Karen Reed stuff, suing your own insurance company, okay, and what really happens. So a lot of people don't understand, and if you don't know whether you have uninsured or underinsured motorist coverage, we're talking to you, because if you don't know, one, you need to find out, and two, if you don't have it, get it. And we've talked briefly about it in other podcasts. This is super, super important. Uninsured and underinsured motorists is when, let's talk about uninsured first. When you've been struck by another vehicle or truck or even motorcycle, and this happens all the time, you guys, and that vehicle does not have insurance. In fact, we just got a new lead. Was it yesterday?
Yeah, it was yesterday.
A new client yesterday. Struck by a vehicle without insurance, and it happens more than you can ever imagine.
Going 60 miles an hour.
60 miles an hour. And then not only did he hit her going 60 miles an hour, he ditched the vehicle and started running and ran away.
Ran away.
I mean, ran away. The police got him, but then they discovered that he has no insurance on the vehicle. So then what happens?
Yeah.
Okay.
And what's interesting is she did tell me that she had talked to multiple attorney offices. We're the only ones that had explained what uninsured and underinsured motorist coverage was.
And actually is, and how it's applicable. So in that situation, people say, well, what happens? Like, who pays for my injuries and my pain and suffering and my medical bills? Like, what's my recourse? Well, against that driver, you really have no recourse. I mean, legally and technically, I suppose you could file a lawsuit against that driver individually.
And the criminal case against him will have some restitution, but even in talking with her yesterday, it was interesting that the prosecutor wanted her to sign a medical records release as part of the case to be able to get the bills and some things for restitution. So it was, and she was kind of like, isn't that kind of intrusive? And I kind of agreed. I thought it was interesting that the victim, again, in this case, is now getting asked for a medical release from the prosecutor's office.
Well, it makes sense because
I mean, I get why
they're trying to substantiate, because they have to present to the judge in the criminal court why they're making a request for restitution.
Yeah.
And the request for restitution is validated, obviously, by the medical bills they're going to obtain with that release.
Yeah.
So that makes sense to me. And that's the legal, logical, reasonable, technical conclusion. But the reality of the situation is, if that individual doesn't have the means or wherewithal to even have his vehicle insured, are they going to have assets that you're going to really go collect if you sue that person?
Yeah.
And then the recourse for that person is, okay, you get a judgment, right? Because you have to file a lawsuit, go through the process. More than likely, they don't have the means to hire a lawyer to defend it, right? They don't have insurance behind them to defend them. So you get a judgment, and you have a piece of paper that says that person owes you a bunch of money. Then what?
Yeah.
You go collect it?
Yeah.
No.
And even if you do try to go collect it, and a lot of people don't know this, but most civil judgments, not all of them, but most of them, you could file bankruptcy out.
File bankruptcy.
And so we get this a lot. I mean, this isn't uncommon, because even on small policies, we have this conversation with our clients like, hey, $25,000 is not enough. That's the minimum policy. The insurance company saying, hey, it was a State Farm or someone for the at-fault party saying, hey, here's the money. And the client comes back to us and goes, guys, that's not enough money. Can't we go get more? Can't we do this?
Well, that's an underinsured issue, right? Right now we're talking about uninsured.
No, but
let's get to that. But
I'm just saying, in that same context, like whether the person in the case from yesterday is uninsured or underinsured, the same thing applies. Okay, if we got even if we were to get the 25, which we
right. No, totally. I want to talk about uninsured, and then we'll get there, because I know what you're saying. It's the same principle.
Yeah.
But uninsured, the question is, and the same question applies with uninsured. We'll get there.
Yeah.
What's my recourse?
Yeah. What can you do?
What can I do? And the answer is, you better have uninsured motorist coverage, because when you're hit by somebody that doesn't have insurance at all, you filed an uninsured motorist claim against your policy. And people say, wait, I have to sue like my own insurance company? Well, you make a claim first, right? Yeah. And in the event they don't want to pay you what your claim is worth, which happens all the time, then yes, you can sue your own insurance company. So what's my recourse? If you're hit by an uninsured driver, you make a claim against your uninsured motorist policy, if you have it. Yeah. So if you don't know whether you have it, find out whether you have it. And if you have it, find out how much you have. If you don't have it, get it.
Yeah, or if you've waived one randomly, make sure you get it.
Which also happens. So if you think you may have signed a document waiving one or the other, find out and make sure you have both. Uninsured, underinsured, because people are driving around all over this country without insurance. That's the reality that we live in today.
And you don't know, and again, this is when you talk to your insurance agent, make sure you mention, like, I want both. It can't be one or the other. I'm not willing to risk it, either that they're uninsured or underinsured. Neither risk is worth it. So when you're dealing with an uninsured motorist claim, right? And let's talk about underinsured now. Yeah. Okay. Underinsured motorist. So in your scenario that you just said a few minutes ago, underinsured comes into play, if you have it, and it's only triggered when the at-fault party, and in that hypothetical you just gave, and this happens all the time, you guys, so it's not necessarily a hypothetical, is when the at-fault driver, let's say, has a $25,000 policy. Now, in Utah, the law used to be that the minimum requirements for liability coverage was $25,000. Now, it's $30,000. Okay, so any policy written January 1, 2025, you have at least $30,000 of coverage, right? Per individual.
So let's say that person has a $30,000 policy, okay, and your claim is worth $100,000, okay? Yep. In that situation, the at-fault carrier typically, not always, because they fight.
Yeah, they fight too.
You guys, insurance companies fight regardless. I mean, every now and then they'll say, oh gosh, we know this has a value of $100,000. Wash our hands real quick, and they tender the $30,000. But more oftentimes than not, they don't even do that. So let's just say they tender the 30,000. They say, "Oh gosh, we don't. Yes, the claim's worth 100,000." Your underinsured motorist portion of your policy now becomes triggered, right?
Right.
Because you're telling your carrier, "My claim is worth 100. The at-fault carrier paid 30. Who's going to pick up the rest of the bag for the 70,000? I'm looking at you, underinsured carrier." So you got to make sure you have it.
Now, does that, and this is a question I get a lot, so does filing a claim on my underinsured or uninsured coverage increase my premiums? That's a question we get a lot.
It's a great question. And unfortunately, we as your lawyers don't have a great answer because we're not the policy writers. But we've been told, because we have a number of friends that are insurance agents, we have a number of clients that have obviously done it. In 20 years of doing this, I've never had a client come back to me and say, "My premiums went up. You told me they wouldn't go up." I've never heard it. And I promise you that. I've also been told by agents that it's not supposed to, because you're making a claim on a policy that you are paying for that by contract they owe to you. Now, they're going to dispute whether they should pay it or not, but it should not affect your premiums. And it's a great question.
Yeah. And I've been told as well, even if your insurance company ends up paying out policy limits on the underinsured or uninsured, if they apportion some of the fault of the accident to you, which happens, right? We get these apportionment, then it still triggers it, which it would have whether you made a claim or not, though. That's what's interesting. So I always tell,
that's true.
The conversation I have is like, look, even if they said 10% was your fault, in our negotiations, and I'm sure, have you ever negotiated a claim any differently, whether they said our client was 10% at fault or 0%? It doesn't change how we negotiate.
No.
But that being said, if they did apportion some to the client, it could affect that. And it's going to affect it regardless of whether you make a claim on your underinsured, because they're still going to, in their databases, and there's a lot of them, they're still going to put it down as an accident that you were something.
Yeah, and that's why it's super important to kind of know how that works, because you want to make sure that you do everything you can to either fight that apportionment, dispute it, because that would be a way that they would increase your premium, for sure. But if you're 100% not at fault, it should not affect your premiums.
Correct.
So just know that. So let's get to the kind of the root of the question, right? Yeah. What's the process? What does that look like? How does that work? Yeah. So you guys, we promise you, if you make an uninsured motorist claim or an underinsured motorist claim, the insurance company, and remember, this is your own insurance company.
The one you're paying premiums.
The one you're paying premiums
At least with the at-fault party, they don't have like a contractual relationship with you, but this is your insurance company.
This is your insurance company. How many times do you think they've just said, "Okay, here it is. Here's the extent of your coverage. We'll pay it."
Zero.
Maybe, yeah. It feels like that.
There are, I mean, I want to be fair. There's some massive where the damages are $600,000 in surgeries. Yeah, they've tendered $100,000 policy.
Okay, same thing. They've kind of.
But I will say, my general feeling is they fight you harder than the at-fault party does.
I swear to y'all, it feels like that. It feels like that they almost fight harder.
I mean, every time, how often have you got a letter that says, because the at-fault party's already tendered the limits for most of these when we're doing, at least under the underinsured portion, almost always, they've already been fully compensated.
Yeah. When we file underinsured claims on behalf of our clients, I would say
9 times out of 10?
I was going to say 90%.
Yeah.
90% of the time, the response is, "We're going to make a zero offer because we think they've been adequately compensated." And we're like, "Are you kidding me?" And then all our clients are like, "They're my own carrier. They're my own company. I've been paying my premiums." And we're like, "You know what? You're right. They don't care. You are a policy number just like anybody else."
And some people ask, like, well, does your insurance company analyze it does my insurance company analyze this any different? And I've been told, at least on maybe property damage issues, sometimes they'll be a little more favorable where it's their client that's, if they've been a State Farm client for 15 years, I've been at least told that makes a difference. I don't see a big difference, but I've been told that. But on the there's not like a big shift in negotiating with a underinsured or uninsured adjuster versus an at-fault party adjuster. For me and Ty, it's the exact same.
It's the exact same. And I promise you, we've filed a number of lawsuits for uninsured and underinsured motorist claims. So we've actually had to file the lawsuit just like we would if we were suing the at-fault party. And we have to name the insurance company, and we file complaints, and they file answers, and you go through the discovery process just like you would the at-fault third-party liability carrier.
Now, sometimes it is fun because, so we've got a couple of cases, and I want to bring this up because I think it's a fun point. There are some where, like, daughter is on dad's policy, and sometimes to keep this out of federal court, because if we sue, if we sue State Farm or Sue Progressive, they'll remove it to federal court.
Yeah.
Where we do list their parent.
Just to keep it in state court.
I got to call up dad and say, by the way, we're going to name you in a lawsuit. Expect that your daughter is going to have this served on you. And
it's kind of funny. But it just, taking that one step farther, guess what? We get the same lawyers on the cases that we do when we sue the third-party liability carriers.
Yeah, it's no different.
There's no different.
These are the same players. There's no... We don't get a call from the defense attorney going, oh, you know what? We're going to be really nice in this lawsuit because it's our client.
It's exactly the same. So should you be sued, or should you be scared to sue your own company? No, it's exactly the same. It should not affect your premiums. And we know how to do it, which is the key. So, but I had a thought I wanted to ask you, because we know that your uninsured, underinsured motorist carriers fight the same. They don't care about you. Sometimes, like we just said, they almost fight harder. And it feels like, and I would guess a lot of you out there listening are probably thinking, it feels like that's what your health insurance companies do too. Question on this issue. Do you feel like the assassination, because that's really what it was, of the UnitedHealthcare CEO was because of exactly what insurance companies do? Meaning they deny claims, they reject claims, they delay claims, and whatever the motivation behind that assassination was, like, we've had enough.
Yeah, I think what's interesting too is when you read comments about it, right? It was because it was, they murdered the UnitedHealthcare CEO. And what's funny is we deal with insurance companies all day long, and we know that it's not just health insurance companies. It's obviously auto insurance companies and property, and basically any insurance company out there. It's not that they don't want to pay what's fair. It's they don't want to pay anything. And I took it as more of a broader referendum than just healthcare. I think how often do you hear a client? Half of our clients probably come to us not out of the insurance company offering a fair settlement yet, because they don't even get to that point. It's even just frustration dealing with the insurance company up to that point. So they haven't even got to a phase where the insurance company's lowballing them. They're still just frustrated. I've got sent around to 9 different places. No one's answering my questions, even though their commercial makes it look like, oh, with just an app click, we solved all your problems. I think there was a collective, a big like womp womp from the general public that was like, we're all used to dealing with these crazy insurance companies and insurance companies at large. So yeah, we kind of understand his frustration. I don't think everyone thought, well, murdering him was the right choice.
No, of course not.
But I do think there was a lot more sympathizers than I think in insurance companies.
I would imagine. And then we have to wrap this episode up, but last question. And I'm curious to hear all your thoughts, and we'll deep dive maybe this on another episode. Conspiracy, people behind it, or single incident with just one individual jaded who may have been affected by decisions from UnitedHealthcare?
I like this conspiracy theory, at least the basics I've seen, more than others, because I do think there's a little bit of, because this isn't like some, who we typically expect of a killer. I mean, this is an affluent person with...
Maggiani's his name, right? I think
Ivy League.
Found in McDonald's with a note and a bunch of things that make it look like this is weird.
At least give credence to, let's explore this a little more.
That's why I think it may require a whole another episode.
Yeah.
But I think the crux of that, and that's why I triggered that thought, because this is what insurance companies do. And even when you file uninsured and underinsured motorist claims with your own companies, your own carriers that you've been paying premiums and been a loyal customer for 50 years, they don't care. You're a claim number, and they will reject, they will defend, delay anything they can to just make you go away. and take significantly less than what you deserve. So, little plug. Find us online. You can find us wewinninjurylaw.com. You obviously subscribe and like to this. Hopefully it was helpful. You can find us on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. If you have questions, hit us up. We're happy to answer questions. Hey, I saw you on your podcast, or I saw you on your TikTok channel, whatever it is. Just quick question. What do I need to know about UIM coverage or uninsured motorist coverage, or what's a good policy? What's a good amount? We get that a lot.
Yeah.
What's a good amount? Well, how much should I have? So if you have questions, feel free to reach out to us. We want to be a resource, and hopefully it's been helpful. So until next time, you guys, everybody stay classy, be safe, and leave early, slow down.